All right, welcome everyone. It is February 7th, 5:30 PM. This is a Arlington City Council workshop meeting. Again, there's just one item on the agenda, the discussion and updates of personnel policy 2.16, and there will be no decisions made at this meeting for discussion purposes only. I would like to end the meeting at no later than 5:55 as we have a ward presentation at 6 o'clock. So with that in mind, I will call the meeting to order, and I think we'll just skip the Pledge of Allegiance. We'll do that at the time of the meeting, a regular meeting. Moving on to, we didn't have an approval of the agenda. Is there someone wish to make a motion to approve the agenda?
Are we required to have three or not for this?
To make a decision, we would.
Oh,
Just for discussion, we
I'll
don't.
make a motion to approve
Okay.
the agenda.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, all right, agenda's been approved, and item 3, discussion on updates personnel policy. Section 2.16. There's two parts to this. One is for commercial drivers, and the other is for non-commercial drivers, non-DOT. And I believe the first one on the agenda is for commercial drivers. Phil, do you have any background? I know these have both been shared with the fire department, as they will be affected by the non-commercial drivers one. I'm a little bit unsure of if there's any discussion needed. You had a chance to look everything over.
The only thing that
That's the ones that were distributed last Thursday at the fire.
okay, well, who got that then? Not all of us.
Yeah, it wasn't that wasn't everybody, that was.
They weren't in,
Not council, right?
they weren't in the packet?
I believe.
I don't believe, I didn't see it.
Okay,
No, I don't.
all right.
I have not reviewed it at all.
I'll give it, yep, yeah, can you make some more, or?
I can. Yeah, why don't we go make some more?
All right.
So, I didn't get one.
What's
Did you
that?
get a policy? Yeah.
Okay, let me go, some of the impression that they were sent out, so let me go make.
Do you want to use mine as
I
originals?
think this is just for document.
Yeah, let me go.
Yeah, that's what it is, that's,
Give me a second, let me go make.
Well, it's hard to talk about it if I don't have it in front of me.
yeah, true.
If I haven't seen it, if I haven't been able to review it.
I'm-
So Phil knows it like the back of his hand, so I think he'll be able to answer.
Yes.
I'm gonna grab my keys, cause the door's locked. Alright, just give me about 5 minutes,
Mhm.
I'll sign copies for
Alrighty.
everyone.
Were you at the full meeting last Tuesday? Who's on that committee?
Joe was the only one that was there,
Yeah,
yeah. And a majority of the,
I would have never known if we even had a meeting if I wasn't here that night.
it was a fire relief, and
Yeah,
there,
I understand that, but it would be nice for the council to know when there's committee meetings going on.
I just wanted to keep it secret. I was
Whatever,
messing
Joe.
with you.
No, I think it's nice for the
No,
whole
I
council to
agree.
know.
Yeah,
that
it was-
there's a special meeting or something.
Exactly.
Not that I would go or anything like that, but maybe I, would've, but I had 2 meetings already that night, so I popped in for what I could.
I think with the resignation coming up sort of unexpected, there was a need for a, I mean,
Well, and that's fine, there's always stuff that comes up and, there's employee relations committee meetings that come up or whatever too, that I don't think everybody hears about. So it's nice if the whole council at least knows that there's meetings going on. Not that, we'd be invited to them, just that we
Just communication.
transparency. So maybe we can ask questions or see how
came from the interactions between the League of Minnesota Cities.
Yep.
You know, and obviously that insurance company.
What we're gonna be looking at tonight as a result of the meeting, the telemeeting that we had, Ross and Amy and myself with the two representatives from the league. Some suggestions on additions to the policy manual. And I believe the fire department you had a chance to look this over?
Yes.
Okay, all right. And we'll ask for some input if you have some input as soon as Phil gets back. I know before we make any decisions on this at a future council meeting, I believe it's going to be brought to the fire department for discussion and approval or whatever, so.
Yeah,
And
they're on to our next meeting,
when is that?
that's
26th. So then we won't be discussing it again or making any decisions until March, our first meeting in March at the earliest.
Yeah, the idea was to try to get, each department to thoroughly digest it and look it over and, ensure it, meets the criteria, I guess, that were, some of the concerns were about.
Yep.
I mean, I read through all the policies, and to me, it's just, I have a CDL, it's the same thing as that, and,
Yep.
no drink,
Yeah.
no drive, you know, it's a personal drive, so. I'm not in favor of it, everything's written fine for me.
Okay. And I think this just spells it out and separates the two responsibilities, DOT or non-DOT, and probably is a little more easily understandable than it was, and that's why they're recommending it.
Guessing we ran out of ink in the printer.
Yeah.
Oh, there he is.
Thank you.
I've got some copies.
Are both the policies together in this?
There are two,
I didn't get my other one back.
which one do you?
The yep, there we go. Now I got both.
Sorry about
So
that.
there's the, drug and alcohol testing and drug-free workplace act, non-compliance drivers, so that's non-DOT. And then there's the commercial.
Thanks, Phil.
driver policy.
So my only thing that I will state concerning this is when it comes to our policy, it's the same except, we just added that firefighters will also be subject to reasonable suspicion testing under the city's drug and alcohol testing and drug-free workplace act policy for non-commercial, drivers, which is the non-DOT one. And this is the template that the League of Minnesota's recommended us we use.
So when you said before, like you're referring to a policy we had before, is that what you were hinting at?
This, well, yeah, that's what we
So
just
the-
updated in our policy, correct? That was just minor, pretty much what that means is that we're still gonna keep the, 2 drinks per, within within 4 hours. However, someone also might be subjected to random testing if there's suspicion.
Mhm.
That's pretty much,
Pretty much the change.
that's
That's,
the
yep,
major change.
Yep.
We also, the other major change is just making sure that we have the proper documentation for legality purposes, hence this information that you have in front of you. It's what the league recommended us that we have, just for updating everything. It's very straightforward, this stuff. We're going to send it over to the, fire department for their once review before we finalize it, if they have any input or anything like that, as we discussed at the fire department meeting. But beyond that, if you guys have any questions, I'll be more than willing to answer.
and again, this can be discussed further at our next council meeting, second meeting in February, so if there are some
If you all,
unanswered questions,
exactly.
we can take that at that time. I think one of the things that, well, I don't think, I know, one of the things that we all came away from the meeting with the fire department last Thursday was that communications is vital, and I think this is an example of it. In other words, here's something that's gonna be changing or enhanced or clarified, and we wanna make sure you guys know about it and that you have no issues with it.
Okay, so these are just the policies for testing, the verbiage for our policy for the fire department, it stays the same, that's in there.
Yeah, except
Okay.
as if you wanna look here, there's just, like I said, it just has verbiage for just random testing for if so required, which, let me show you down. Right
So
here.
if there was a feeling that, you know, someone was intoxicated and they said they weren't, but it was appearing they were, you know, they could be asked to take a test.
And who would submit that test?
It would be whoever is, in charge at that moment, it might be the fire chief or someone that they deem in charge at that time.
So we're buying test equipment or,
To my understanding, the fire department can chime in on this. I do believe we would maybe ask the police to come in and do the testing and stuff like that,
Yeah.
which is possible.
They would have the,
So
do you guys have portable
Yeah,
tests?
don't you send them up to the clinic to do it?
So
I mean,
what
Well, that's
was,
if they wanted to draw blood.
so what,
Even for the urine test,
I think it's in there
No,
too,
no.
sorry, I think it's in there too, urine, you're supposed to
yeah.
go with your
okay,
Right,
person,
no.
stay with them.
Right, no, you're right, sorry, I
so what was
was not
discussed?
thinking urine on that.
You know, some of the firemen, and I'm terrible with names again, it was one of the previous chiefs, I believe.
Jeremy?
He's been talking, he had talked with, is it Jeff? Yeah, so he, you know, he talked, he had shared examples in several of our meetings now, I mean, this was probably the fourth one. A couple of council meetings too, about how things have been handled. And they don't have for one, they don't have a history of issues with this situation, which is positive, but,
Yeah.
you know, they shared that they talk to the people and people are not confrontational and they basically, you know, end up leaving the scene of the
Leaving
call.
the fire hall
Yeah.
Mhm,
before they
yeah.
go there.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I believe that, because, I mean, they're all together, they're one team, and if you have somebody that's
Yeah,
not.
you're trusting that person to go in.
I mean, right, because by them doing something incorrectly or making an accident or having a mistake, they're endangering the crew too, not only.
from a DOT side of it, does Kirby, I notice, is Kirby? Yep, he's here. Is that something that affects your department?
Wouldn't we already get tested for it? Random testing.
But I mean, you do have to comply with DOT.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Guidelines, right?
Okay. Okay. And what about ambulance now? That's really not involved here at all because there's a zero tolerance, or am I?
Yes.
Okay,
So we're considered the non-DOT category.
okay,
And then, also I have kind of tweaked our policy to dovetail off of what the city decides to do for their city personnel policy, but yes, we are zero tolerance.
Okay.
Kind of back to some of the feedback, the one thing that was voiced and shared, that it had to do with sort of the word of mouth stuff that was spreading throughout the community. And an individual had heard about it and, you know, was part of a township, so was like, you know, it's our tax dollars, we're gonna be impacted by, you know, all of these firemen or, you know, that may leave and then, you know, other communities are gonna be called more often, so the feeling was that, you know, we could have done a better job as a city communicating that to those areas.
Yeah, I think communication's always key when you're
Yeah.
doing things. It would've been,
Yeah.
probably would've been much better to work through that before we tried to roll anything out.
I tried to share that we were, you know, discussing it pretty heavily and trying to get it right so that it, you know, wasn't gonna go to that level.
Going off that, I'm not sure if this was stressed at the meeting, cause I had to leave partway through, but this was an HR issue. That's why, I can tell you the reason why this, for that reason why it wasn't told to anyone else, because it was strictly an HR issue here. And for whatever reason, someone decided to spread it around, but that's, at least from what I understand.
No, it came up at a council meeting.
Right, but even still, it was strictly a human resource issue, and sometimes those things, depending on how sensitive they are, should not be spread around. So, that's from
I
what I'm
think we
understanding.
shouldn't have discussed it, we should have discussed it as just a discussion at the meeting, not that we are changing the policy where you had public here, were recorded, people can play these back.
Well,
Sure.
So if it's sensitive, it shouldn't be discussed in an
well,
open meeting.
the whole,
Well, we have to have open.
I know we
meetings,
know.
But it doesn't have to be on the agenda,
Right, that's what
That's
that's what I was trying to get at, is that it should've just been a discussion.
a discussion piece on it first, correct? And then decide which way we wanna go with it.
Instead
As a
it came,
council.
yeah, instead it came up as to vote on.
Correct.
and the reason,
Like an action.
and from my understanding, the reason why it did, because due to the HR issue, when the city administrator went to League of Minnesota to look at our policy, the reason why it became a discussion is because of how our policy was outdated, therefore it came to in front of council and things like that. I
So
think,
But it
Yeah,
came,
got
it
put
came
on
to
the
as a much different
Came-
proposal though.
correct,
Yeah.
no, I understand that, it's just originally,
Yeah, the original thing that started
Right.
it, but
And
how it was.
Was a P.
How it was shared with us and the recommendations that were being made was to basically act, and it was decided not to act. And then that's when, you know, individuals were reading what was being recommended and heavily concerned over what implications that was gonna have on,
And,
you know, them being able to.
and then it dragged out longer than, you know, because to try to get
Unfortunately,
back,
yeah.
it dragged out for
Yeah.
a month.
You know, when you don't know,
Months.
the mind wanders, and
Yep.
sometimes when the
Mhm.
mind wanders, it wonders about, you know, things that, you know, are completely way out there, you know. In the end, hopefully, we're getting it right, and everybody is, you know, gonna be, okay with the,
I think the
Well,
I think we're
we're
past,
pulling people in, we're pulling
Yes.
departments in and stuff like that, to have that discussion, to know what direction we're gonna go, not that we're all one way or one way, but we're coming to a consensus and agreement with the groups that are involved here. And that's what's most important,
I agree
is
with
bring
that.
them all in.
Yep.
So,
Communication,
we'll just have to do better about bringing stuff up for action
engaging the right groups.
before we have maybe some discussion on some of these things in the future.
Okay, is there anything else anything to be brought up? As I
would
mentioned,
just add that I took it for the team, so.
All right, Joe.
did a good job.
My tires still had air when I left.
Wasn't that bad then?
Okay, again, if there's something that comes up as you look through this, those of you that just received the copies this evening, please bring it to the next council meeting, and a decision again won't be made at the earliest the March meeting, whenever that is, first Monday in March. So, anything else? I guess that pretty much takes care of and I mentioned, I'm sorry that we were on a little bit of a short schedule, but I think we have pretty much went through what needed to go through right now. And please give it some more, a look at what these changes are being made. And at that point, I guess at this time, I'm gonna call for a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
Go ahead.
Councilmember Batchor moved to adjourn, second by Councilmember Morgan. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion's carried. Meeting is adjourned at 5:53. Okay, you can turn off the recording.